I know everybody's going to ask. I thought the same thing. When I saw fan frets, I thought, there's no way I can play it. What was your experience when you first picked it up?
I mean, I had played fan fret guitars before. I played a fan fret 8-string. I borrowed that for a number of months. It was actually made by Doug Campbell, who makes Black Machine guitars here in London. So I had come across them before, but I think where there might be certain problems on guitars, chording can be an issue. It can also become easier. The fan frets can actually reduce the amount of stretch that you have to make.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you play a chord that goes the opposite way, it can become more of a stretch, which is a problem. Bass, I feel like you have a lot less of those problems. And honestly, I think the thing that everyone has found whenever I've let them play my bass or anything is always that it's so much less of an issue than they think it's going to be. Especially if you don't look at where you're putting your fingers. Then it just happens naturally. You very rarely hit a wrong note.
When I first tried one out, I closed my eyes purposely to see if I could screw up by not looking at it. And that's what sold me on it, was the fact that with my eyes closed, my fingers just found their place. I still don't understand why it works, but it does.
I don't know if it's the reason, but I certainly like to point out to people that the frets, if you look at any two frets, they are very close to being parallel to one another.
Yeah.
It's only when you take in the whole range of the guitar from nut to bridge, way off the playing end, that it starts to look as severe as it does.
And by design, most of the stretch has been pushed into the bridge side of things.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know, is it somewhere between the 7th to 8th fret, the parallel?
It used to be the 7th exactly, and then as we evolved things, it drifted a little bit. So there is no perpendicular fret, but it's right around the 7th, 8th fret.
I think the only thing that can trip you up is if you're used to moving your elbow a huge amount to move your arm up and down. That's essentially to keep your fingers parallel to a parallel fret board. If you allow your elbow to stay in position, more or less, you'll find that your hands naturally kind of angle themselves as you move around. I'd say the only physical challenge is dealing with the 37-inch scale, which for almost anything you do isn't much of an issue. There's one song which we don't play very frequently where I do have to stretch from the 1st to the 5th fret on the E string, but I've gotten around it. For one stretch in the set, it's worth it for the sound. You can just do a quick shift. You have to position shift rather than being able to take it in one static stretch. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, as I say, I think the trade-off is more than worth that one hurdle. And certainly, by being quite a narrow nut on this instrument, that really enables the stretch. And it's a thin neck, almost guitar-like. I think actually guitar-like, not even almost, with a very low action. That was something that drew me to it straight away, and must come, I think, from your background in guitar playing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't try to, but any luthier, when they carve a neck, they're going to carve something that feels good to themselves. And I grew up in an era when necks were sleek, and not sleek in a knife edge kind of way, but just sleek there's just enough wood there to support your hand, and no more, no less. And
I've certainly never heard anyone complain about it being too thin. Put it that way.
No.
But it is a very playable neck. And we did tweak it slightly for this model from the regular combustion.
Yeah, and that was sort of the final piece in the puzzle. We've had the combustion model, which this is based off, for several years now. And one of the criticisms of that model was that the neck was larger feeling. And just through constantly thinking about it, why is that? The dimensions are the same. Why does it feel bigger?
That blew my mind when I found out it was the same actual neck profile as on the Canadian instruments. It felt completely different.
And it's funny, all it took was just re-radiusing the fingerboard, making it a bit of a tighter radius, and everything fell into place. It radically changed the feel of the neck. And
so just to explain, that the center point of the neck is still the same thickness as it always was, but
identical.
The fretboard now tapers more towards the edge, so it has the feel of being slimmer.
Yeah, and in piano, I never forgot the teacher telling me to learn like you're holding an orange, and keep your fingers curved. For whatever reason, ergonomically, it's better for your fingers, according to my piano teacher, and I never forgot that. And so with the bass, because you're stretching your hand out, we've always tried to have as round a shape at the nut as possible. And that's one of those things I can't prove, and I don't even know if I'm actually on the right track or not. I do know that it does feel more comfortable. And it certainly affects the neck in a very positive way, having a tighter radius on the fingerboard.
And the Canadian models flatten out. They have a compound radius, if I'm correct.
Yes, they go from quite a traditional 7.5-inch radius at the nut and flatten out to almost a 25-inch radius at the bridge, which sounds insane, but we worked it out with a computer, and that's what it takes to do it properly.
So what is the radius on this? Because this doesn't have a compound radius. It's
a single radius, and it's a 240 millimeter, which is roughly 9 inches.
Okay, yeah. On guitar, I think the one problem you run into with heavily radiused fretboards is bending can become an issue, but it's not really a problem with bass. Now, I've certainly never played this and felt like that was anything other than a perfectly normal fretboard.
That was my worry, and the other worry was because the bass, the window that the pickups are trying to sense. If you have too much radius, like on an older Fender style instrument, like a jazz with a flat top pickup and quite a heavily radiused string arc, you wind up with the outside strings being too loud and the inside strings being not loud enough. But we were able to work around that, and it actually everything fell into place that we've got a nice even output, even though we've increased the string arc.